We are thrilled that our presenter is Aviva Black. First, a big thank you to Sarah Reed, our JGN colleague, who is helping facilitate. Aviva will take questions throughout, so please feel free to use chat and raise your Zoom hand. And if your camera is on, we'll invite you to unmute and to show yourself on screen. We will spotlight you. Now it is my pleasure to immediately introduce Aviva Black, who is founder and principal at Family Love Letters. Aviva has a Master's of Education, was a history teacher and a vice principal, and has worked widely with intergenerational families in synagogues and other settings. Through Family Love Letters, which Aviva founded in 2018, she works one-on-one with individuals and presents to groups around the country. And Aviva is zooming in from Oakland, California, where she lives with her family. Welcome and thank you for leading us tonight, Aviva.
Well, thank you so much. It's really great to be here. I've been looking forward to this evening, and I am just delighted. So I wanted to let everyone know just a few bits of housekeeping, so to speak, that we will also at one point be going into breakout rooms. And while this session is being recorded, the breakout rooms will not be. So what you say in the breakout room stays in the breakout room, unless you're one of the brave souls that will share to the larger group when you're invited to. Okay, everybody? Okay, great. All right, then, thumbs up, great. All right, so again, I'm very happy to be here, and we can go to the first slide. Sarah is going to guide us through the slides. Wonderful. Okay, so now let's go to the next slide, Sarah. So I would like to hear from you. If you would please write in the chat, do you have anything written by your grandparent? And if so, what is it? And if it's not a grandparent, maybe it's a great aunt or uncle. What do you have written by one of your loved ones? You can write it in the chat. Oh, someone said nothing. That's most of us, by the way. A letter and a card. Oh, cards and notes from my grandma. Things from my grandparents. Oh, birthday card with the signature, I love you, Lisa. A handwritten letter. Oh, okay, it's the handwriting itself that gets me, for sure. A 5th birthday card from my grandfather. Yeah, birthday cards, lots of letters. I use them with my genealogy and love the handwriting. A few cards, several handwritten letters. Well, you're a lucky group. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for all of those. So if you have something that's been written to you from a grandmother or grandfather, you are really, really lucky to have those. And we know that many things, from our grandparents, if they traveled, if they came from another place, right? People who came from Europe didn't come with things from their grandparents. So we have the opportunity to build this treasure chest of written notes and letters to build a story for our grandkids. So let's go on to the next slide. This is my inspiration. So you're seeing me here. Oh, yeah, there we go. You're seeing me here on my wedding day. I'm with my father here. And I'm just going to tell you a little bit about him and how he inspired me. So my father was a rabbi in New Jersey, where Terry is from, or where she lives. And he was a rabbi for many years. And as a rabbi, he regaled people and engaged people from the Bima through his sermons and through his prayer. Around the dinner table, he engaged and captivated friends and family with stories. And as a father, I can tell you, he was absolutely extraordinary. And the reason is because he made you feel special If you look at this picture, I think you can see the warmth in his eyes. He really made you feel seen. He was warm and inviting, and he made you feel special. And he certainly made my brother, sister, and I feel special. Well, when he was about 65, very close to when he retired, he was diagnosed with a rare degenerative disease. It doesn't have a name. It's a gene mutation that's several lines long. But basically what happened was at first he had trouble with balance and then walking. He lost his hearing, not entirely, but to a great extent, and also his sight. So here was someone who connected with people through conversation, now having a hard time even following a conversation. And it was extremely frustrating to him, and it was absolutely heartbreaking for us to see this, to see him going through this. And when he was 78, he died. And in the days following his death, my brother, sister, and I were in his study going through some things. And I'm actually sitting at the mid-century desk that was his forever. And that's the one I was going through in the days after he died. And I opened the top drawer, and resting beneath his brass letter opener and his very well-worn deck of cards was an envelope. And on it, it said, "To Arye, Adina, and Aviva, love, Abba." And I take out this letter, and I will tell you that we were astounded because it captured all of these stories and people in his life. He talked about going to Israel and being part of Young Judea. He talked about his time in the rabbinate. And he wrote this a long time ago, but it captured all of his warmth and his love for other people, the importance of friendships, values that he held, like tikkun olam, being part of a greater world than ourselves. And also his hope that the three of us would remain close. And it also had his humor. It wasn't just serious. It really sounded like him. And so when we read this, we literally laughed and we cried, and it got us through that week. And since that time, I go back to the letter at times when I need to be either inspired or grounded. It's a real connection for me to my father, and it was such a gift. Now, my father, being who he was, this was not difficult for him to write these kinds of letters, and this was a lengthy one. In fact, I can imagine him sitting at his original, Apple IIe. You might remember those. They're now under glass in museums, but sitting there and typing this letter. And I'm sure it was an extremely meaningful exercise for him. And it was a gift for him, and it certainly became a gift for us. And this is why I've made it my mission to help people cultivate communication skills, as a way to have meaningful conversation with those closest to them. And so for the next however long, let me look at my watch, like for the next 35 minutes or so, I'll give you everything I've got in terms of how to communicate in simple ways, but really deep ways with your grandchildren. And at the end of that time, we'll have time for Q&A, and then I'll tell you how you can get a hold of me. So we can go to the next slide, Sarah. These are my grandmothers. There's my Bubby with the white hair, and my sister Adina is on her lap. And there's my grandmother, and that's me on her lap. And they used to give us cards. They were not handwritten cards. And in fact, you see here, this is an example of a card that my grandmother would have bought for me, either one of my grandmothers. So this is one that was bought from a store. It's pre-made, and Hallmark depends on us not being able to approach a blank card, not being able to come up with what we want to say. And so, "Dear Aviva," and it says, "love you to the moon and back, then past Saturn with a right turn and 3 loops around the sun. So lots." And so she just wrote, "Dear Aviva and love Bubby." And I would keep a card like this. If my grandmother, one of them signed it, I have cards that they signed, and I knew that they spent time finding just the right message. And that continued as we got older. My bubby died when I was 12, but my grandmother lived until I was an adult. And she really took the time to look through each Hallmark card to find just the right message. But, most of us are not like that. Most of us don't want to spend time in the Hallmark section. And in fact, it can take less time than going to the store and coming back, much less time to write a note that is truly from us with our expression to our grandchild. And it's a gift to us to write these kinds of cards, original notes. So we're going to talk about how to do that. Okay, you can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so now it's time to take out your pen and paper, which I hope you brought, as well as your photo of one of your grandchildren. So we're going to spend just a few minutes making a list. And it's almost like painting a picture of the way you see this grandchild, the feelings that arise in you from thinking about your grandchild. What I have here are some examples that I wrote about my son. So Carrie Byrne, if you were here for the long distance grandparent workshop, she talked about the path to connection. And she said, sweat the small stuff. Find out what your grandchild is interested in. So included in this list, I want you to go to the small things, the things that they're interested in, whether it's baking or maybe it's playing soccer or reading. What are the things that your grandchild is interested in, and include that in this list. And then we'll come back in 3 minutes, and then we'll talk about what you do with this list. Okay, everyone, so please start to wrap up your thought, and then we'll come back to the larger group. Okay, so Sarah, if we could be all together now. Wonderful. Okay, so this kind of list is a good one to have. First of all, it gets you in the mood. Get you in the mood to write a card specifically for that grandchild, rather than just sitting and facing a blank card. You can stir up the feelings and also get some ideas for some of the interests and specifics that you have about that grandchild. So I'm just curious to hear from somebody. Would anyone like to share how they described their grandchild? And I could probably use Sarah or Terry's help to send recognize. You can raise either raise your hand or your Zoom hand. Okay. Lisa. Hi, Lisa. And just there we go. Hi.
I wrote that I have a 9-year-old, almost 10. He is the most loving, gentle, sweet soul, especially around animals. And that's what I love the most. To see him cradle a duckling or hold a bunny, in the spring when the nurseries have Easter things, but and that's the first thing I think of him.
That is so lovely. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. Thank you, Lisa. Can we hear from another person? There's Sandra. Hi, Sandra.
There we go. Hello. Theo just cracks me up. So my words are clever, funny faces, fast thinker, sweet, tender, thoughtful, love, learner, liar, artist.
How old is he?
He is 5.5.
5.5. That's great.
And he's so funny. I mean, and he's just like, I found a photo of him on my phone because he figured out that you could just push the phone icon when the phone's in off. And anyway, it's
you
so
did a photo shoot?
he did a photo shoot, and it's so funny because he gets so busted. He finally gets the picture and he's like,
That's great. Thank you very much for sharing. All right, Michelle.
Well, my grandson is Wesley, and he's 3.5. I was just there the beginning of February for like 10 days because I'm in Massachusetts, he's in Houston, so the trips have to be bigger. And he's always been really sweet, but he just like grew up since the last time I saw him, which was October. He's got the sweetest smile. It looks at you with these big brown eyes and long eyelashes, and he's just reminds me of his dad. I'm like, he's such a flirt. He can get you to do anything. And this time, so the first night I'm there, he goes, Mimi, will you give me my bath? And will you read me the Richard Scarry? Well, he didn't say Richard Scarry, but the big red book. And will you put me to bed? And then the next night, Mimi, are you going to do my bath and read my book and put me to bed? And his parents looked at each other and went, what are we, chopped liver? I said,
That's
you should be happy. You're going to get a week of this.
That is so great. That is fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So, okay. Did you see the participants, the people who just relayed their pictures that they have of their grandchild? Did you see the joy on each of their faces? So this is a gift to you. When you write these cards and this message, we're going to thread this throughout this workshop today. This gift is to you. You're writing a card to your grandchild, but the gift is yours. You know, it's for you, because look at how much joy we get. If we can actually just pause, think about the grandchild, see the grandchild. You know, when Carrie talked about that, not sweating the small stuff, right, and making a real connection, it's so that your grandchild knows that not only are you thinking about him or her, but that you see him or her. And so each person that just shared gave specifics, and we're about to go into more specifics, but I want to say something about this list. This is a list that if you put a date at the top of the list, and let's say after today, you know, you added to this list, even throughout the year, you added to this list. Wow, how incredible will that be for you to have and for your grandchild to have later on, just having this list. And this is just prep work for writing cards. Okay, so I really do suggest that you put the date at the top and you're describing your grandchild at this, you know, at this point. Like, one person, I think it was Michelle, said that, you know, your grandson grew up from the last time you saw him in October. It happened so quickly. So we'll be able to see that if we have these side by side. Okay, we're going to go on to the next slide now. I love the comments in the chat as well about the grandchildren. So great. Okay, really important to get specific. Again, it's being seen. It shows that you are, you know, you're really thinking specifically about this grandchild. If you have 3 grandchildren in one family and you write the same thing to each of the grandchildren, right, to all 3, I love you so much. You're an amazing grandchild. I mean, your grandchild will know that you definitely, genuinely love him or her, but they won't know the why. So here's something that we're going to do in breakout rooms. You can take note of these examples, and these are ways that you can get specific. Carrie also talked about these. So you might say, I love that you, and maybe you look back to your list that you just created. I love that you care so much for animals. You're very tender when you hold them. Or remember when we, I don't know, made challah and put sprinkles and chocolate chips on the challah? What was so great was, and maybe you talk about how your grandchild reacted. You know, tell a little bit about him or her. Or we have so much fun blanking together. I can't wait until. Okay, so these are different ideas for cards. So now we're going to go into breakout rooms. You can write down the beginnings of these, each of these, and then we're going to spend 4 minutes a person. Okay, so you each have a chance to go through each of these. At 4 minutes, we'll come in and broadcast that it's time to switch speakers. Okay, so we'll be able to switch speakers and write down these phrases so that you have them later as well. Okay, everybody. So Sarah's going to get us into breakout rooms. And we'll...
Aviva, could you repeat what our instructions for the breakout rooms?
Sure. So I would like everyone to write down on your paper. I love that you, and then you're going to finish the sentence. Remember when so you're going to think back to a time that the two of you were together. And then what was so great was, and you'll complete that sentence, or we have so much fun blanking together. We have so much fun, maybe it's baking together or reading books together or going for nature walks. I can't wait until, and you'll talk about the next time. So I want you to do each of these. So what you'll do is one person will say to the other person, speaking about the grandchild whose picture you have, and I love that and you'll complete the sentence. And you'll do it for each of these 3. And then after 4 minutes, we're going to say switch, and you'll switch partners. And then we'll come back to the big group. Okay, is that clear? Terry, does that sound clear?
Yes, just to confirm, we, at the risk of contradicting you, Medea, we planned 3 minutes each, total of 6 minutes. You still comfortable with that, or would you?
Yes, that's fine. 3 minutes each.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, wonderful.
Okay, Sarah, over to you.
All right, see you all soon and have fun. This is Kvelling time, so have fun. Okay, so everybody is back. So good to see you all again. Okay, so I would love if somebody would share with the group how they completed the sentences and how was it easy or hard to come up with endings to those phrases. So if you would raise your, your Zoom hand, and then we can call on you. That would be great. Hey, Paula, let's get you into view. Hi, Paula. Oh, you're on mute.
Of course I am. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting activity, a really fun one. But to answer your question, once there was like a little pause in my brain, but once I got going, it was like a gush of, and I was actually explaining to Nanette as well that do I go back in time because there's so many moments, or should I just focus on the now, like where my grandchild is now and the more recent experiences? And so what I did was I used some to talk about the now and some to talk about, let's go down memory lane. Do you remember when we did that? But I really think it was a great exercise because you could go in 1,000,001 directions. It sort of opened up the spigot, and then you can just keep pouring out little tidbits answering.
So Paula really hit on something. Well, 2 things I want to mention. The going back in time. I mean, there are some things that you might say when you were a baby, we did this, they would never remember, right? But I think you'd be surprised by what they remember.
Yeah. Us.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. And if they don't remember, then you can ask them about it the next time you're on the phone or FaceTime with them, right? The other thing that Paula, before we go to the next person, the other thing that Paula said was that there was a pause and then suddenly it gushed forward. And why is that? Because it comes from the heart, everybody. You're speaking from the heart. You do not need to be a writer to write a card from scratch. You don't. You just need to speak from the heart. That gushing is all it takes. It really is. Okay. Is it Helena's? Am I pronouncing that correctly?
It is
There we go.
I did it 3
Hi.
times.
Can you tell
3
me
times
again
the
how do you
charm.
pronounce your name?
Helene.
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 Oh,
Yes.
it's Helene's. Okay, I see. There's
Yeah, plain old.
okay,
But
Helene. So tell me how
usually
it was for
Helen is the
you.
era.
How
It
was
was
it for
di- it-
you?
Okay, first it was difficult to get into the breakout room. So by the time I got there, the lovely lady and we chatted briefly, but I didn't have much time to share, and that was fine because these really, for me, they require a little time.
Mhm.
And then I know that I'll gush. My grandchildren live far away, both sets. So unfortunately, our interactions are often prescribed. Like everybody comes home for Pesach. I'll definitely be talking about how the job of going around the table with the pot and the water and the pitcher has gone from their parents to them now, and now the little ones, and it's just a joy. We do everything together, so I don't have that many isolated things with each child. So I'm going to have to really think about that. It's a wonderful activity. I can't believe I haven't thought about this. I mean, I was a teacher, and the idea of giving a sentence starter, holy smokes, because I do the pretty much generic loving you from the, to the moon and back
Mhm.
cards. I do write, so it's not unusual to me, not uncomfortable, but I am going to have to think about it because a lot of our activities are everybody's together. It's a very there's not a lot of the very everyday. My son and his family live in Las Vegas, and my daughter and her family live in New York. And I always said we're the right angle. We're in Florida, so we're here, and he's there, and she's there,
Right.
and the love is incredible. So that won't be a problem. And I did
Okay.
enjoy listening to my partner's gush about doing science work with the children. So this is a very good activity.
Okay, I'm so glad, Helene. Thank you. And you know what I would say is that you have your homework cut out for you, because even though you might do things as a group, as a whole family, if you take a moment while you're all together and really look at each grandchild individually and see how they're participating, how he or she is participating, or how, maybe you all go out for ice cream. So on Pesach, it'll be in cups. Maybe you go out for ice cream. What flavors do they order? Do they order the same flavor? Do they order different ones? How do they stand out when you're together? And it might be, that you are not together often. So do you speak to them on the phone? Does one of them play soccer? You maybe have never been to a soccer game of theirs, but you hear about the game. And you can say, I love hearing how excited you are about your soccer games, right? So it can be individual that way, because what it shows is that you see him or her. And we all want to be seen, each one of us. Okay, thank you. Margie and Steve.
Okay, hi.
Hi.
Wait, let me just lower. So this was a great exercise for us because the granddaughter that we're thinking about this whole session is kind of difficult to deal with. She's very strong-willed. We don't see her very often. They live, 2,500 miles away. We FaceTime occasionally. We see them about twice a year. And so this was really good because it made us sit down and focus on the positive things about her. So unfortunately, the last time that we were there, there was a big blowout, and we ended it on okay terms, but they're going to spend the summer with us, and we're kind of anxious about having them here that long. But we want it to be a great experience, and so for us, focusing on all this stuff, I love that she loves Harry Potter. So we said, I love that you know so much about Harry Potter. You're the Harry Potter expert in our family. I remember when we made cookies, it was great how creative you were with the frosting. So it really forced us, and the other ones are, pretty similar. But it forced us to really focus on the things that we did with her, because we have 3 other grandchildren also, but really focusing on her. Because the other ones are cuddly and lovey, and everything that everybody said about their other grandchildren. This one is a little more difficult. So
Right.
thank you for, letting us focus on this.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. And you're not alone in having a difficult grandchild. And to be honest, the clients I work with who are your ages here, sometimes they have multiple children and one of them is a difficult child. And we have to adult child, and we focus on, what are some of the good, let's not compare. Let's just try to see some of the good. And Margie and Steve, what I would say for you, if you're having them for the summer, is that you could spread out notes of things that you look forward to doing. Maybe it's how old, I can't remember. I don't know if you said how old your grandchild is, but 7. Okay. So maybe it's reading Harry Potter aloud together. It doesn't matter how old the child is, by the way, everyone likes to be read stories aloud. And so if you were to take turns reading, you could say, maybe we could read it together, Harry Potter. I mean, that would be so fun. So come up with things, the bonding experiences that you can do together. And then, by the way, you'll have these interactions with her that are different. Maybe it's at night, or maybe you're sitting in a cozy reclining chair or in bed together and reading, and that's your solo time. And then you'll be able to write more notes following the visit. Yeah, and you can also ask the person, if you have people coming for Pesach, you can ask, is there anything that you're going to want to do while you're here together? Is there anything that you want to do? And then that's a nice way of communicating, and you can do that either in writing on the phone, or else you can just ask them on the phone and then write a note about how excited you are for them to come and why. All right. Well, thank you for that. Thank you, each of you, for sharing. I hope it was helpful for everybody. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so you all have the best ideas. So we focused on cards here. Can you write in the chat ideas of when you might write a card or a note? And I will read some of those aloud as we go through. So you can write it in the chat. When might you write a card or a note to your grandchild? Birthdays, Hanukkah, holidays. Yes, anytime I think of them, anytime. A good report card, summer camp. That's always a good one, by the way, you guys. Everyone loves a card, a letter at summer camp. After a visit, shortly after there's been a full moon, and remind them that we can look at the moon together. I put notes in my grandchild's lunch, even just a Post-it with a heart saying, I love you. I write once a month on the day of their birthdays, whenever you think of him or her, mostly for bar and bat mitzvahs. That is excellent. That writing on milestones like that are incredible. And I'm gonna keep a note of that. We're gonna come back to that in a minute. After a challenging experience or day, which makes your relationship, the bond, it can make it stronger. They feel seen and heard and can feel your empathy when an event in family history occurred. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's go back to let's see, we can go back to the full group again. And, all of these ideas, you can see that there are many different times and occasions. It doesn't have to only be for a birthday, although what an opportunity when there's a birthday to speak directly to that grandchild. But there are lots of other times. Whenever you think of him or her, there doesn't have to be, anything to celebrate or to note. Just that I'm thinking about you, and I was thinking about the time you said this. Could be the joke you told me for the clever grandchild. So there are lots of different times and occasions to do it. My son went abroad for this semester. He's in Madrid studying abroad, and I snuck a note into his suitcase so that when he arrived there, he had a letter to read from me. You can do that when your grandchild comes to visit you, or you can put it under his or her pillow on the day that you leave, their house. The other thing that you can maybe ask the parents is, if you sent a bunch of notes for the lunch boxes, would they mind putting it in the lunchbox each day or on certain days? Try to make it easy, though. Make it easy for the parent. But that's something that you can do. So there are lots of different occasions. Okay, I want to go to the next screen. So these are some helpful tips. Remember how I said to date the list that you're making? And by the way, keep adding to that list, or in the following year, start a new list with a new date. Always put the date on it. And also date the cards, the notes, anything that you send. Maybe you send a picture, a photograph as a postcard, right? It can be a photograph. You can make a copy of a photograph and use it as a postcard. And it can be from a photo of your grandparents, maybe. And on you put on the back a note and just say who the people are in the picture. Maybe it's a picture of your grandchild when he or she visited, and you make that into a postcard. The next tip is the most important one. Let go of perfection. What is perfect? Perfect is speaking from the heart. That's it. That's perfect. You're making the effort to write this heartfelt letter, and that in and of itself is a gift to you and to the grandchild. Have fun. This is not an obligation. You should really just be creating a sense of joy and fun by starting maybe what is a new tradition for you. And pen pals is an idea. So pen pals, this is something that if you were to ask your grandchild if he or she wanted to be pen pals, you'd have to be very loose about it, in the sense that you may, be right on top of it. You'll send a letter, and then you'll expect a letter back, and then you'll write back again. But it could be that there are long lapses. Remember that the attention span for a lot of grandchildren to do this is not as strong as it is for you. Okay, so you have to just be accepting and know that it will be stretched out over time. There's a way to bring in some of your history, so, to connect the generations. Maybe you want to talk about Jewish traditions. Maybe your grandchild is not being raised in a very observant home. And I don't even mean observant, like maybe many of the rituals are not being practiced, if at all. And you would like to tell him or her about your family, which is also his or her family. That might be something that you could do as pen pals a little bit over time. But I would say, please get the permission. If the parents are not practicing Judaism in the home, please have a discussion, a conversation with the parents before you introduce this idea. And in fact, if the children are young and you would like to be pen pals at all, you may want to bring it up to the parents at first just to see if the children have the bandwidth. What they will probably say is, I think it's okay, just I don't want to have to be, involved. They don't want to have to be on top of their child to do it. And they would probably say, please don't have high expectations. Okay, so keep disappointment out and abundance in. And Terry, I think, did you have something you wanted to say about pen pals? We can go off of the slides.
Sometimes people in advance of a session write to me, and this lovely grandparent wrote and said that they couldn't make it tonight, but wanted me to know that she has a 10-year-old grandchild, and they live in the same city, but they've set up a practice of being pen pals and writing to each other in handwriting. The grandmother supplies the stationery and tries to include stickers and keep it cute. They started by writing to each other about school and the grandchild's extra activities. And then as the grandchild grew older, the grandparent felt perhaps she had permission, or it was more natural to speak about her own childhood, her own parents, and the things that she would do. This grandparent is 76 years old. Now, what they do is they include 3 questions to each other as prompts to respond to one another. She said sometimes they run dry of conversation, but that's okay. They pick it up next time.
That is fabulous. I'm actually working with somebody on a family love letter, and she put it out there to her grandchildren. What questions would you like me to answer in my letter? And this is a lengthier letter, but it's we think that our grandchildren don't care. And I know most of you probably have younger grandchildren, but you have to trust me, they do. And they definitely will want these cards that you write, these letters, these notes, if they are made special, if they reflect who you are, and if they reflect your feelings and the way that you're seeing this grandchild. There's no question that these will be keepers, and you will have so much fun doing it. So I think that we have time to open this up for questions. If anybody has any, you can raise your Zoom hand.
In fact, if people would just, if you'd like to unmute, just go for it. We have 5 minutes or so left. Marsha.
Hi. This has been really eye-opening for me. And my grandchildren are young, almost 1 and just turned 3. So, I have room to grow. But one of my concerns is that my daughter and son-in-law are very, what's the word? They don't like a lot of clutter. So I don't know. I think I need to talk with them about whether they would say these things.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want to just start sending things, they can't respond yet. Although, I've started to think, I could send them an envelope with, already addressed, envelopes, pre-addressed, pre-stamped for them to write back. But in terms of them holding on to what I write, the word I was thinking of was minimalist.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just a thought I had.
Okay, so I appreciate that. So what I would say is this: I am also somewhat of a minimalist, and I curate what I keep. If it's a meaningful letter, letters and cards and notes don't take up much room. In fact, I have one keepsake box that I keep all of these really special cards and notes in. And that's really the key. So if you just have a card that says, I love you so much, love grandma, they may keep it because they want something from you. But are they going to keep every card that says, that's a store-bought card that says, I love you so much, grandma? that can become an obligation. So just make it meaningful. Make it meaningful. If you're sending the oversized cards, well, then all bets are off.
Yeah.
You get an oversized. And by the way, with someone who is, with the children who are really young, like the 1 and 2-year-olds, what is very special to do, because obviously the 1-year-old is not going to be reading this letter. It's still so priceless to write letters to babies, letting them know how you feel about them as being as part of the family, what kind of baby they are, what they do, the feelings that they give their own parents. It's such a special opportunity, and you're not going to get anything back, right, from writing that. That's the true, that's in terms of gifts, it's really for you. I wanted to say one more thing before we go to the next question, which is, my father, who was a really great writer, he also did things where can you see this? So he did collages when he wrote cards to my kids when they were little. Here's someone who is a Torah and Talmud scholar. He would cut out pictures of animals and just put them on pieces of paper and write things like pretending that the animal was speaking to my kids, to each one. That it was out of his comfort zone. But
Aviva,
I'm sure he's fine.
To jump on your response that when you write to a baby or a very young child, don't expect a response. We have a question from somebody who's not able to unmute, who says, I can't, my older grandsons don't answer texts. Why would they answer a written letter?
Yeah. So emails forget about, right? And texts, they get many, many, many texts a day. Many. They get from all of their friends. They get lots of texts. And if they're younger, then, it's just hard to know. It's a bit of a training. If you were to say to them, listen, when I write, if you could just write back, a word. But the truth is that we can't expect the response. It really has to be that the gift is for us to write the card, to think about the grandchild and to write it. I know that many people, when they send a check for a birthday or for Hanukkah or whatever, they understandably, a grandparent would like to receive a thank you note. It took a lot of training for me I still remind my kids, and they're, 20, I remind them to send the thank you notes. It's a lifelong training. So, I would say that it's a very short step to go from where you're feeling joy in sending the card and sending the gift to then feeling resentment. And I would say, you have control over that, and you can just keep the door open. So without expectations, it's keeping the door open. I hope that helps. Okay. Do we have time for another question?
We do. We have another 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. Hi, Karen.
When the previous person spoke, I had written down a special box, when the next time you see them, the bubby box or the grandma box, put it in your bubby box or something, so they can do it.
That's fabulous. So you, as the grandparent, can provide the box.
Oh, absolutely. And decorate it. Oh, yeah. I'm going.
Great idea.
I can't wait. I'm so excited. He loves the, yep. Thank you.
That's a fabulous idea.
But it tied into what
box.
The person that brought up, they're going to throw it out, the minimalists, but a little box.
Yeah, because you know what minimalists like? Organization.
Right.
They want somewhere to put that letter or that card in the bubby box, in the Zadie box. Right. Thank you so much, Karen. Can we take one more?
Definitely. And then there's one more in chat that I'll share with you, and then we'll sign off.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, Judith.
Oh, hello. Someone else actually mentioned this in the chat, but I was going to say, I scan letters that I think are particularly creative that I've written to family members and keep them in a file on the computer along with, family round robin letters and such. Because on special occasions, I tend to write the letter in verse, and fancy pictures and other things. And I want to remember what I did so I can riff off of it for other people's celebrations, but also just because it's fun to read. Also, I've scanned pictures that my kindergartner made for me and, you know, as a letter, because I thought, oh, wow, look at her grow. And I put that in the file. And it gives us both something to look back upon, and they can be printed out later on, especially if you have a color, you know, scanner. Or
Thank
copy.
you, Judith. That's a fabulous idea. So there are things that we do for the present, right? For the now, the writing the card, enjoying being a grandparent, right? And getting through some struggles, whether it be with the parents, the grandchildren who's difficult, the grandchild is difficult. And then there's the looking forward. I know someone who has all of the letters. She and her mother, they lived one on each coast. She has all of the letters that her mother wrote to her when she was going to Cal, and she was living, and the mother was on the East Coast. Her mother died, and what she doesn't have are all of her letters that she had sent to her mother. And they were pen pals for many, many years. So she has only half of the letters, and she's very happy to have those. But what Judith said, scanning the letters that you write, well, that tells the whole story later on. Thank you. Okay, Terry.
So I think we will not get to the last question that was in chat because we are at 8 o'clock. Thank you so much, Aviva. Thank you so much to all our friends joined us tonight. So appreciate you all giving us your time. Tomorrow morning, we will follow up with you all. Everybody who registered actually will send you the recording. I will send you the chat transcript because there's so many good ideas in chat. And we will send you the slide. Aviva's given us permission to share her slides with you. And we will show you, tell you how you can connect with Aviva and explore her work. So we hope we will also include a survey, a very short survey to give your feedback about the session. Meanwhile, from all of us at the Jewish Grandparents Network and from Aviva Black and our team over here, we thank you so much for joining us. Aviva, special thanks to you.
Oh, thank you. It's really been a pleasure.
Invaluable advice. To everybody, good night. Thank you so much for joining us.